Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I woke up this morning and I was literally flooded with all kinds of stuff that I need to show you today. We're going to start here. This is the BlackRock CEO in Davos talking about tokenization of stocks.
I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. We will, and if we could have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement.
That sounds like atomic settlement. Do you remember when Jack McDonald from PolySign was talking about atomic settlement? You know what else he does over there at PolySign? He does custody of digital assets.
And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem. You don't need trust banks.
But does that disrupt you eventually? Because you are custodying all of these assets.
No, we're not a custodian. We're not. We don't. We use third-party custodians in everything we do.
Ooh,
in everything
PolySign?
We don't. We're not a custodian bank.
So your goal. By the way, I don't think that he was technically a custodian either, which is a separate issue.
I think they were. I don't know if there was a real custodian in that closed ledger, but that's a whole other story. You should ask him that question.
You know who is one of the major custodians? BNY Mellon, one of the biggest custodians in the world. Just so happens that the same guys went to help create PolySign.
No, I mean, the transformation, think about it, instantaneous settlement, bonds and stocks. No middlemen. We're going to bring down fees even more dramatically. As for me, I don't have to vote on any shares anymore because the beneficial owner will do all the voting.
So remember back a couple of years ago when we were covering, I was just talking about the PolySign website. It used to say on their website that they had built it to scale to the trillions. Well, why would you need to scale to the trillions? Not 1 trillion like the crypto market was, but to the trillions. Well, you would need to do that so that you can custody a tokenized world. That's why you'd need to do that. PolySign private equity, which I own a bunch of, happens to be there's still some of it on the Link2 platform, who is one of my sponsors. Link2, the link's in the top of the description. Click on it. Tell them DAI sent you. Now, yesterday I saw this bank warning. It was yesterday, wasn't it? Let me look at the date here. Yeah. So yesterday, banking warning. Something is seriously messed up at Bank of America today. No Zelle transactions are being received. Additionally, if you call B of A customer service, you will receive a recorded message saying, due to extenuating circumstances, we cannot complete your call. Then this video is going around. Now look, folks, this might just be some glitch that Bank of America had. That's fine, but I still want to show it to you and make a point.
So I'm a Bank of America and everybody's missing money. I'm also missing money over $1,300 and they're telling me to call customer service. And they keep hanging up on people. This another person here is also missing money. So we're trying to see what's going on. Money's missing today and we need our money. And they're already telling us to call customer service. And customer service ain't doing nothing about it. So just a heads up, if anybody's experiencing this, please let us know because this is not right. I'm missing $1,400 from my account, and they're telling me that there's no way they can help us. This guy's missing money too. This other person is missing money too. And you missing money too? There you go. So this is not something that's just one person. This is everybody's happening to them. And this is crazy. This is very crazy. Yes, Bank of America decided to take people's money without their consent. And we're asking what's going on, and they're giving us a runaround.
Okay. Now, this may have just been some local thing. This may have been just some kind of flash in the pan. I don't know. But I do want to make a point out of it because we keep on, and I'll cover this probably in the next video some, but one thing these people at the World Economic Forum keep talking about is cyber attacks, like they're imminent and all this. And that gives me the creeps, because I remember, and I'll show you this in the next video just to refresh your mind, the Jim Rickards video about what he called ICE 9, about how they have a plan to shut down the banks. I've told you before that in their documentation they have put in bail-ins so they don't have to go kneel to some nutcase like Nancy Pelosi to get a bailout next time. That's the lesson that these bureaucrats and politicians learned from the financial crisis. So they wrote bail-ins in. Cyprus was a test run back in 2013. And it's important that you understand what happened when they literally in Cyprus shut down the bank accounts and shaved off a portion of those depositors' deposits, okay? Now, when that happened, what happened to crypto? Bitcoin surged, okay? My point for you and me is that we're all sitting out here. We might have a Bifrost wallet, or you might have a Sum wallet, or you might have a Ledger Nano S, who is one of my sponsors, and links in the top of the description. I use all of the above, okay? Well, when people lose their access, I mean, this is how I'm preparing. I can't tell you how. I'm not a financial advisor, but the way I'm preparing is I've got a diversified set of wallets that are in my control. I'm making sure I have physical cash, making sure I have physical gold. I talked to you about my Glen account. Part of the reason I have the Glen account is because it's a non-bank account, and I can have gold that I buy in there, and I can spend that gold with my so I'm just this is how I'm protecting myself. You got to talk to your financial advisor about how do you protect yourself. The link to these ledgers is in the top of the description. They just came out with these ledger stacks, and they're going to ship in April. But you can also buy the Ledger Nano X and all that in the meantime if you want to go ahead and while you're waiting. All right, Brad Garlinghouse did a fireside chat. I clipped out what I found to be the most interesting parts of his fireside chat.
We're now processing billions of dollars of transactions every quarter. And well over half of our total transaction volume, because we do have a fiat and XRP enabled product called on-demand liquidity. Over half of all of our transactions go through XRP now. That has grown, and so we did have some exposure to FTX. Yeah. I think we publicly shared before. That's around just over $10 million of XRP we had leased to.
I had not heard that until this interview.
So they used for various things on FTX. What we get back from that, I have no idea. The alleged fraud. We'll see how the bankruptcy stuff plays out. And as I said, regardless of that, again, some companies were way overexposed and I think found themselves in a very stressful situation because they had too much exposure, too much debt, too many of those types of things. And for us, that I think represented about 1% of liquid assets. So, I would rather not lose that money. And I'm hopeful that through the bankruptcy process, we get some or all of it back. But it's not too consequential to the business. Well, we publicly, when the layoffs in crypto started, we publicly announced we're still hiring. I think in Q2 last year, we hired 100 people. In Q3, we hired 100 people. Q4 is a little less than that, partly because of the holidays.
When you're sitting on $1 billion,
we have no plans to do any layoffs. We're going to continue to grow and hire. And again, that's just, we sign more customers. We need more people to support those customers. We need, we're obviously building, well, not obviously, we're building new products that we are excited about. And even conversations I've had here in Davos, we have existing customers coming to us wanting help with other elements of the kind of crypto ecosystem.
How are you expecting to be resolved? Are you expecting to reach a settlement with the SEC or just let the judge decide on this one?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we're now 2 years and 2 months in, or 2 years and 1 month into the lawsuit. SEC filed suit against us, saying that our sales of XRP represented sales of unregistered securities. And, from the beginning, I thought it was very clear that the facts were on our side and the law was on our side. And I think as you have seen this play out and you've seen the filings in the court, that, the judge certainly is hearing our arguments. There's been, I think the SEC's behavior and some of it has been, I would say embarrassing as a U.S. citizen. That, just some of the things you've seen happen, you're like, you've got to be kidding. But look, it's now fully filed and fully briefed in front of the judge and the second district. And we expect a decision from the judge, certainly in 2023. But you don't really have any control over when a judge makes their decisions. And I'm optimistic that, sometime in the coming single-digit number of months, we'll have closure there. To your question about settlement, I mean, the problem here is the SEC, in particular Gary Gensler, has articulated a view that all crypto is a security. The only way that Ripple would settle, and I've said this at the very beginning, the only way we would settle is if there's clarity that XRP is not a security on a go-forward basis. So you have this conundrum where the SEC is saying all crypto is a security. We're saying there's only a settlement if we can say XRP is not a security on a go-forward basis. So the Venn diagram for settlement is, I think, zero. So I think we're going to end up letting the judge decide, and I'm very optimistic. And I think people here in this audience know, and here at Davos know, this case is very important to crypto, not just for Ripple. It's for the whole industry. And I think the fight that we've been fighting really in some ways has been for the whole industry.
And in terms of the SEC specifically, you've been critical of the way the US has approached regulation towards the industry. What exactly, are you concerned about, and why are you critical of the way the US has approached?
Well, two things. One, something called regulation through enforcement is never a particularly efficient way to regulate, right? If you want to regulate, do the work, write the rules, codify the rules. And, when a company comes to you and says, hey, help me understand the rules, and I make sure we're following the rules, help them understand the rules. I met personally with the SEC 3 times. Not once in those meetings did the SEC ever say to me, hey, and by the way, we're totally transparent about what we're doing. Not once did the SEC say, hey, we think XRP might be a security. So then for them later on to go back and say, hey, the whole time we thought XRP was a security, we just didn't tell you. That doesn't feel like a genuine, partnership between public sector and private sector.
It feels like the SEC need to be investigated.
And, some of this stuff I'll be more vague about because some of this stuff, it hasn't been public yet. But there's something called the Hinman email. Bill Hinman, the director of corporate finance at the SEC, gave a speech in June 2018 about how ETH had been a security, but had magically become not a security. And there's some emails associated with that the judge ordered turned over 6 times. We finally did get those emails. And I think when those come to light, I think you will see more kind of like, how is it possible the SEC decided to bring a case against Ripple, given what they were saying within their own walls?
Yeah, and then if you look at the global regulatory landscape, where do you think is sort of on the right track? In the European Union, you've got this MiCA regulation coming in, which sort of specifically targets things like stable coins and exchanges. Is that a good first step? I mean, where do you see good regulation or good talk about regulation happening?
So I think MiCA is a good first step. And also maybe, not dodging your question, I'll get there. But I think one of the things that I have been struck by is how much the U.S. regulatory discussion has dominated some of the meetings I've been in here in Davos. And it loses sight of the fact that globally, the direction of travel on crypto regulation is actually quite positive. You have more and more countries doing the work to codify and be clear. And these aren't small countries. This includes the UK and Japan, certainly here in Switzerland, Singapore, the UAE. You're even seeing countries like South Africa start to do that work. And again, instead of regulation through enforcement, it's actually, hey, let's take the time, let's partner with private sector to write down and be clear about those rules. So leaving the U.S. aside, I think it's actually quite positive. And yes, the U.S. is the largest economy in the world, but there's a big economy out there. And again, Ripple has thrived over the last 2 years, and we basically haven't been able to sell into the United States market.
So that's why you've seen a lot of traction outside of the US so far in the business.
Right.
Great clip. And then we have John Deaton weighing in. He says 9 days after the SEC filed the case against Ripple, alleging XRP itself was, is, and always will be a security, that's the complaint and summary judgment claim. I filed a writ of mandamus versus the SEC and said the lawsuit appeared to be used as a weapon. So John is pointing out and see, this is the reason all this talk, this is the reason that I'm convinced that this judge has to, for XRP going forward, this is the reason I think Brad's so confident. XRP going forward, you can't say that this is not how the Howey test works. You can't say that some future the oranges themselves are a security going forward. You can't say that. Now, the only way the judge says that is if the judge either does not understand Howey or, I don't even want to go there, or has been influenced otherwise. But because the Howey test doesn't say that, the judge knows that. That's the reason these guys are so confident. You can't say that the SEC literally says in the lawsuit that the oranges, there's in essence saying that the oranges themselves are securities. They know that's not true. The judge knows that's not true. Ripple knows it's not true, and John Deaton knows it's not true. Well, if that's not true, Ripple has to win that portion of this lawsuit, which means that you can't say XRP going forward, no matter what, how you do it, it's a security. Now, the judge could say, here's how it won't be a security if it's sold going forward. That's what I think is going to be done. So anyway, that's the point of that. Now, Brooks Entwistle from Ripple was also in Davos. He's a sharp guy.
We're building outside the U.S. very rapidly, given the opportunities we see. But we're not going to go kind of off-piste and try to chase shiny things this year. There's no room or time for that with this kind of environment.
In terms of, you mentioned CBDCs is on your radar. In what regard, how are you helping out with that?
Absolutely. We have an interesting approach. We realize we're not going to solve that problem for every single central bank around the world. We're very targeted. We found great interest in some of the smaller central banks around the world that are looking for a strategy, looking for a partner, looking for a technology, a side blockchain, ideas about how to go about this. So we had our first MOU signed with the Kingdom of Bhutan in my neck of the woods back in Asia. Palau is an example, but we're in conversations with dozens of central banks around the world trying to figure out the best way to help them across this goal.
They want to use XRP or Ripple Labs or to develop it?
They want to use technologies that will help them help their own citizens. And so we don't believe there's any one solution for all these central banks in this technology across the world. There's places we can play. There may be a side chain to the XRP ledger. We may help in the interoperability across this, but it's going to be different at every single central bank.
I like to always remind everybody the way I heard David Schwartz describe this, because this is where people always go, they're doing it on a private ledger. Well, David Schwartz presented that as being like a starting point. So in other words, I've always imagined you've got these private ledgers. Let's say you've got Bhutan and they've got their CBDC that's built on an XRP private ledger and it's walled garden. And then over here you've got, let's say you had Australia and they had their own CBDC that's had a private ledger built on XRP. When those walls come down, they can go through XRP to go to the next country, and then they go back into the walled garden at that other country, and the wall goes back up, and so on. And so that is what you call a bridge currency, folks, and that is the way I've always pictured this thing. I can't remember which conversation David Schwartz said that in, but that's how I've always thought about this thing when they started talking about these CBDCs built on a private ledger. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that if XRP would be a bridge in that scenario, people have to buy it, sell it, borrow it. In that scenario,